Hopefully this video is out on time, for God's sake. Hey guys, I'm back with another video. I know it usually takes me another 3 years for a new video, but this year I'm feeling a little dicey. Halloween is one of those celebratory days I don't feel any sort of attachment to. Don't get me wrong, it's not because I didn't grow up trick-or-treating or anything. It's just that I was a big pussycat who was too scared to consume anything horror growing up. Haunted houses? I'm covering my eyes. Ghost stories at the campfire? I'm covering my ears. Horror movies at night? I'm covering both my eyes and ears. Needless to say, I was terrified of anything horror related. Yet, I can't stop thinking about RPG Maker horror games. Ah yes, the good old days of watching your favorite AnyTuber play these modern classic games like Mokeko Castle, Mad Father, Witch's House, Ib, and so on and so forth. There was just something really special during that summer of 10th grade. Instead of preparing for the SATs, we would rather stay up late at night to watch a half Australian, half Japanese man scream about killer anime girls. I suppose this year's Halloween has reignited my fascination with those games, which brings us to today's video. Although these games technically counted as horror content, I was never scared enough to avert my eyes from them. Perhaps it's the anime art style, or the fact that not all of them rely on cheap jump scares. I like to believe they emit a specific kind of nostalgia, not exactly for my childhood years, but for the transitional period in between. That time period when you still yearn for something familiar, but infused with glimpses of morbid curiosity. The time you begin to shed away your innocence in favor of something that better accommodates your hormonal sensibilities. I would argue games that perfectly capture this feeling are none other than RPG Maker horror games, especially ones that feature classic fairy tale characters. What better illustrates the loss of innocence than ruining your own childhood bedtime stories, am I right? My dear audience, I would like to present to you the dark side of Little Red Riding Hood and Red Hood's Woods. Full disclosure, I chose to talk about Little Red Riding Hood games because, well, I recently played these two games and I thought they were pretty cool, okay? Leave me alone! Plus, I believe there's no better fairy tale story to discuss the loss of innocence other than this one. For one, the actual classic versions of Little Red Riding Hood are more disturbing than you may realize. For example, the Charles Perrault version doesn't even have a happy ending. Both the grandmother and Little Red are eaten by the wolf and that's it! The end. Not to mention, Perrault's intended moral of the story is, well, you can take a look for yourself. Anyway, the first game, The Dark Side of Little Red Riding Hood, is an RPG Maker game developed by a circle named Charon. Or Charon, I don't know. They're known for games with cute visuals followed by the most unhinged mess-up stories featuring Menhara type girls. The Dark Side of Little Red Riding Hood is basically an adaptation of the classic story, but with a twist. In the game, you play as the Little Red Riding Hood and you're tasked with delivering some stuff to Grandma, as instructed by your mother. To progress, you just walk to the right, save your progress with this cute bunny, and just keep walking to the right. I know I claim that I find these games fascinating because of what they represent, but the execution is not always the best. Let's start with the positives. This one excels in the horror department in the most conventional sense. The creepy atmosphere is established by the off-putting background noises and the lack of music at certain points in the game. There's also this sense of dread that slowly eases you into what's about to come. As anticipation builds up, I get so nervous that I can't even play the game at full screen. The game screen also becomes redder while the music gets more eerie to prepare you for the horror you're about to witness. Likewise, the visual is a perfect blend of cutesy art style and harsh, dark lines to really sell the grim, unsettling tone. Unfortunately, that's about it for me in terms of what I like. The production quality is amazing, yet there's a lot left to be desired in the narrative department. In typical RPG Maker horror fashion, there's multiple endings to the game. The regular quote unquote bad end is the most uneventful one, where Little Red here just walks to the right to visit her sickly grandma. Things become a little spooky, but as you reach the house, nothing happens. You say hi to grandma and bada bing bada boom, you're done, roll credits. The real story lies in the diverging paths in between the normal road that lead to 5 different true endings. I'm not going to spoil it in case you want to check it out for yourself. Download link in the description. But let me warn you that there are explicit, triggering content in them. Also, the game is super short in playtime. You can probably beat it in 25 minutes or less if you know how to get all the endings. What I find lacking in the story is that it relies heavily on shock value to be psychologically disturbing, ranging from depiction of violence and starvation to more severe concepts like cannibalism, SA, and even human trafficking. Similar to other RPG Maker horror, the mysteries behind the characters and setting remain vague and unsolved. Like, why is everyone and everything so evil? Nothing wrong with that inherently, but coupled with the incredibly short runtime, there's not much to get out of it. This game portrays the theme of the loss of innocence in the most literal sense, taking a classic children's fairy tale and turning it into a super edgy horror game for teenagers. It's a simple case of utilizing juxtaposition to achieve novelty. Even so, one can argue that the original versions of Little Red Riding Hood are already quite horrific on their own. Heck, the versions from around the 10th century also feature cannibalism. Nevertheless, the dark side of Little Red Riding Hood offers a sort of postmodern lens of the classic tale. An outwardly innocent children's story with an important life lesson is turned into a game filled with only gruesome tragedies just for the sake of it. Again, not a terrible experience by any means. I just wish there was more to it. Let's see if Red Hood Woods is any better. Many of you must already recognize this game because this one is actually a prequel to the infamous game series known as Black Souls. Another disclaimer, I have not played the Black Soul games at all, so this review is based on this game as a standalone title. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want me to play those games and make videos about them. Anywho, Red Hood's Woods is an RPG Maker game that is inspired by the classic tale instead of just being an adaptation with a twist. It has its own original story, characters, expanded lore, and actual RPG gameplay. The story involves Little Red Hood here going on an adventure to, I guess, kill a bunch of RPG monsters because her grandma is not home. Look, I really don't want to give away anything because I actually find the story really interesting. Not unlike the previous game we just discussed, there's mess up, explicit content in this one. Hell, I consider this one even more explicit because, at its core, it's a hentai game. It's one of those games where the explicit content happens almost every time you lose/die in the game. Some of you might be put off by that fact alone, which is completely fair. Some of you may even celebrate that fact, and I'm not gonna judge you for it since I'm not one to talk. However, I would argue that some of those scenes contribute to the overall conceit of this game. Ultimately, this story is about the loss of innocence and its consequences. Instead of just a dark version of the original, it wrestles with the idea of how the loss of innocence would influence the characters themselves, how they cope with that loss, and find ways to move past the despair that comes with it. What's immediately apparent is that Red Hood feels like an actual character with discernible development. She begins the game as this hollow, melancholic kid that is so eerily nonchalant about everything horrible happening to her. Then, the more you play, the more you uncover the mystery behind her personality, along with her terrible past. Safe to say, I find this game way more enjoyable than the dark side of Little Red Riding Hood. Indeed, it may be more problematic in certain aspects, but that's part of why I find it so fascinating. Rather than doing a little subversion to scare the kids away and indulge the edgy teens, Red Hood Woods decides to be more. Again, I'm being very vague here because I don't want to give anything away. If you play Black Souls, you already know what to expect. So there you have it, Little Red Riding Hood RPG Maker horror games that capture my attention one way or another. One scares me a whole lot more than I'm willing to admit. Meanwhile, the other one was an alarming yet enjoyable experience. But what do these games have to do with Halloween, you may ask? Well, like I mentioned before, these games represent the loss of innocence for me. The time in which you may still cling on to your comfort zone, while also being tempted to lay your eyes upon things commonly described as unpleasant. The time when your hormonal instability compels you to be tantalized by concepts that used to horrify you. What better holiday is out there to discuss this topic than the one that combines a childhood sense of wonder with the concept of horror itself? But remember, I'm just a pun. Nothing more and nothing less. Happy Halloween! Like and subscribe if you want part 2 to this video, cause there's at least one more RPG Maker game about Little Red Riding Hood I haven't mentioned. See ya, I'm gonna go watch Call of the Night now. Also, fuck Chibi reviews.